My name is Michael Reynolds. I am starting as an architect, but have moved into what I call biotecture, which is a sort of a profession that we've kind of molded and created that I think is the definition of which is more appropriate for taking architecture where it needs to go in today and the future. It needs to be released from the definition of architecture, and the way it's going is it's about buildings, and it's kind of about architects, in my opinion, and not about people. The architecture needs to be by, of, and for people, because they are the ones we're trying to take care of here, and we're trying to do it in a way that is in harmony with the planet. So architecture is about people and planet and nothing more, to provide our sustenance. And architecture is a vessel to do that. I'd say I wish it were that that they were more there were more forces going in this direction, let's say. And it has to do with the economy. You know, architects need to make money and so on, and it's a profession like a lawyer, like a doctor. But both of those have gotten, messed up over the years too because of economy. I think that this vessel that we call the Earthship, it's just a concept. It addresses 6 things that are aspects of sustenance of people, and that is comfortable shelter that doesn't use fossil fuel, and water, and treatment of sewage on site, and food, and garbage, and electricity. There is no person in any tribe or village or city or alone that doesn't need to address these 6 things. So we make this vessel that we call the Earthship address these 6 things in a way that provides the sustenance for people. Those 6 things provide the sustenance. And if we can teach people how to address these things themselves in their own buildings, then they're empowering themselves. And yeah, in my opinion, it goes beyond architecture. It goes into a much more thorough understanding of the whole living situation. I think the architect has the training structurally to make physically manifest shelter for people and buildings that people use. But if they would include the understanding of these 6 points, and that they are all available by direct encounter with phenomena like the sun, like the rain, like the wind, like the biology of plants, like the physics of thermal mass, the physics of convection, the physics of condensation. If all of these things are just recognized, and again, it's 8th grade biology and physics, architects could lead us to a better world. The reason I invented something I call biotecture is because architects have their own codes and regulations that don't allow you to run sewage through the living room. That's what I got accused of. I have banana trees growing in the living room of buildings that look like an Amazon rainforest in your living room, with birds flying around and bananas ready to pick and eat, but it's in the living room and it's nurtured and watered by the gray water from the bathtub and shower. So they accuse me of running sewage through the living room. Well, they're right. I am. But I'm doing it in a way that works. And, I have jungles. Every Earthship is a jungle. And if it's out in the middle of a dry, high, cold desert, I've got an Amazon jungle in there. And yeah, you can define it any way you want. And it does. That's why we call it radical sustainability, because there's not time for us to spend. I did spend 4 years getting a law passed in New Mexico. I would never waste my time doing that again. I'll just go where there is no need for a law. And also, the more catastrophes that happen, the more the authorities are willing to look at something new. And like I say, especially after a complete disaster, they'll take anything that will give people housing and water. So it's a constant battle, let's say, but we have got many examples of it all over the world and more happening all the time. And we're finding that when we do get the chance to execute it properly, uh, we don't have to convince people. All they have to do is walk in one of these buildings and see. I look at it like this. I love to play around with aesthetics. In other words, I was in the early years a painter and a sculptor, but I wanted to do something a little more meaningful than a painting on the wall. So my point is, I'm into aesthetics. But look at it this way: if I make a beautiful, beautiful boat, carved and just sculptural and beautiful, and that boat sinks, it doesn't float, what good is it? I make the boat float first. And once it floats, then I decorate it. And if I can derive those decorations out of what makes it float, then it's aesthetics stemming from performance. And that's probably where the real truth is. So I think aesthetics is just an expression of truth in a building. And a truthful building is a building that comes out of this planet like a plant and nurtures the planet and the people at the same time. The building codes were kind of introduced, let's say, long ago to protect people, and I think that was a good thing. But like so many things, the protection has grown to be, a choking situation. We're being choked with our own protection, and it is keeping us from evolving. And I think that's the crux of the issue right there. We are not evolving because we won't let ourselves. We're choking ourselves with our own hands. And of course, we'll faint before we die, but that's not evolution. So we're looking at a way to step outside of these codes and regulations. And what I find all over the world, that's why I go all over the world. On the Andaman Islands, there's no codes and regulations. In the mountains of Colombia, there's no codes and regulations. On the island that we got in Indonesia, there's no codes and regulations. So we're able to pursue methods of sustenance for people without the encumbrance of codes and regulations. Now, we also try to evolve them in metropolitan areas as much as we can, and we try to tune the Earthship concept so that it will fit there. So we're going to do things at once. We're trying to make this concept work and fit into the codes and regulations as much as possible, knowing that that slows down its progress and its evolution. So at the same time, we're out in frontier land and doing whatever we think will take care of people and planet. So we're doing both of these things at the same time, and one teaches us more about the other. One thing we have learned and keep seeing over and over is when there is an earthquake or a hurricane and it devastates everything, like Puerto Rico right now, Mexico City right now, that presents kind of a hole in dogma. And that hole, we go through it. That's why we go there, because then we see that those very 6 things I just mentioned they're almost desperate for those things. They are desperate for water. They are desperate for shelter. And when they're desperate, the codes and regulations don't prevail. The desperation for water does. In other words, if there's no water and 10,000 people are dying of thirst, nobody's thinking codes or regulation. They're just thinking, get me water any way you can. So we're looking at those desperate situations, and when we go there and see that they need the same 6 things that we need in the developed world, which is not so desperate, but approaching being desperate. So we're just saying the same things are needed everywhere. They're needed in Haiti after the earthquake, or Mexico City after the earthquake, and they're needed in New York City and Chicago and London right now. They're needed by everybody, just in varying degrees of desperation. And we all know that it's going to get more desperate as time goes on.